Imagine a place where time does not just slow down, it practically forgets to move. A place where creatures without bones, without shells, without any obvious chance of survival after death, somehow leave behind traces that last longer than civilizations, languages, and entire species of humans. That place is not a sci-fi vault or an alien archive. It is the ocean. And not the friendly, postcard version with turquoise water and sunscreen. This is the deep ocean, the part of the planet that behaves less like nature and more like a cold, patient librarian who never throws anything away. If this quiet exploration of how the ocean preserves creatures for millions of years helps you unwind tonight, please like the video, subscribe to the Deep Sea Documentary channel, and leave a comment sharing when and where you're listening, so this slow science can reach more people who fall asleep to the deep ocean's ancient stories. On land, the ending is messy and fast. A fallen animal becomes dinner, then dirt, then memory. The air is full of oxygen, bacteria thrive, insects arrive like they received a group text, and within days or weeks, almost everything is gone. Soft tissues do not stand a chance. Muscles, skin, organs, all the things that make an animal look like an animal instead of a skeleton, vanish almost immediately. That is why most fossils on land are bones, teeth, or shells. The squishy parts lose every fight they are in. The ocean rewrites those rules. When something dies and sinks into deep water, it enters an environment that feels less like decay and more like suspension. Down there, time stretches. Processes that take days on land can take centuries. Processes that never stop on the surface, slow to a crawl, so slow it barely counts as movement. The deep ocean is not gentle, but it is incredibly consistent. And consistency, it turns out, is fantastic for preservation. This is the core mystery that has baffled scientists for decades. How do animals with no hard parts, no bones, no armor, end up preserved well enough for us to recognize them millions of years later? How does a jellyfish, which is basically a swimming water balloon with ambitions, leave any trace at all? How do worms, soft-bodied sea creatures, and fragile larvae survive long enough to become fossils when their modern relatives barely survive a strong wave? The answer begins with understanding that the deep ocean is not designed for speed. Everything happens slowly. Food arrives slowly. Life moves slowly. Change itself seems tired. When an organism sinks from the sunlit surface into darkness, it is not just falling through water. It is crossing into a different version of Earth, one where the usual rules of biology get rewritten in fine print. Think of the deep sea as the world's most overpowered refrigerator. Not the one in your kitchen that hums loudly and forgets about vegetables, but a cosmic freezer that operates non-stop for millions of years. Once something enters, it does not get refreshed, it gets archived. And unlike museums, this one does not label anything. It just keeps it there. This is why scientists often describe the ocean floor as a time capsule rather than a graveyard. Graveyards are active places. Things break down, interact, change. A time capsule is sealed, isolated, and forgotten until someone digs it up. The deep ocean seals its contents with water, darkness, chemistry, and sheer indifference. It does not care what you were, it just keeps you. What makes this especially wild is that the ocean does this accidentally. There is no intention, no design, no grand plan to preserve history. The ocean is just doing what it always does, and preservation is a side effect. A beautiful, eerie side effect that lets us peer into ancient worlds that would otherwise be completely erased. And this preservation is not just about fossils in museums. It reshapes how we understand evolution itself. Without these deep-sea time capsules, we would assume early life was simpler, tougher, and more skeletal than it actually was. We would think softness was a weakness that history immediately punished. Instead, the ocean shows us that soft life was everywhere, thriving, experimenting, and evolving, even if most of it never had a chance to be remembered. Except here. So when we talk about creatures preserved for millions of years, we are not talking about rare miracles. We are talking about a system, a planetary habit, a slow, relentless process that quietly files away pieces of Earth's story, while everything above the waves forgets and rebuilds and forgets again. Empires rise and fall in centuries, mountains erode, ice ages come and go. But somewhere in the deep, an ancient creature rests exactly where it settled, unchanged enough that, one day, we might meet it again and realize the ocean never forgot it at all. And this is only the beginning. As a body sinks deeper into the ocean, something strange happens, long before darkness fully takes over. The water does not just surround it. It stacks on top of it. Layer after layer, mile after mile, the ocean presses down with a force so enormous, it is almost hard to describe without sounding dramatic. And yet, dramatic is exactly what it is. At great depths, the pressure is so intense that every square inch of an object is being squeezed by the weight of several elephants who all skipped leg day but still showed up angry. This pressure is invisible, silent, and relentless. There is no sudden crunch or cinematic collapse. Instead, it is a constant, unblinking squeeze that never lets up. And while that sounds like a nightmare scenario for living creatures, for dead ones, it becomes something oddly useful. Pressure does not just crush, it controls. On land, decay is basically a free-for-all. Microbes swarm, tissues break down, and scavengers arrive as if someone rang a dinner bell. In the deep ocean, pressure turns that chaotic party into a very quiet, very exclusive gathering that almost no one can attend. Most bacteria that thrive near the surface are simply not built to function under such extreme conditions. Their cellular machinery struggles. Their enzymes, which normally break down tissues with impressive efficiency, start to fail. It is like asking a sports car to perform in a vacuum. Technically still a car, but wildly out of its comfort zone. High pressure alters how chemical reactions behave. Reactions that normally zip along suddenly slow down, as if the molecules involved are trying to move through thick syrup. This means the processes that cause tissues to rot, dissolve, and collapse happen at a drastically reduced pace. Muscles do not immediately turn to mush. Skin does not vanish overnight. Internal structures hold their shape longer than they have any right to. Pressure also plays bouncer at the door when it comes to scavengers. Many animals that happily consume dead material in shallower waters cannot survive at extreme depths. Their bodies are not reinforced for the squeeze. Their proteins, nerves, and membranes are not designed to work when the ocean is actively trying to compress them into abstract art. As a result, a body resting in deep water often lies untouched, not because it is unappetizing, but because the guest list has been dramatically reduced. Even scavengers that are adapted to depth do not move or feed the way surface creatures do. Energy is precious in the deep sea. There is no sunlight, no easy food supply, and no reason to rush. Animals that do arrive approach cautiously, feed slowly, and sometimes decide the effort is not worth the calories. It is the opposite of a feeding frenzy. It is more like a polite nibble, followed by a long nap. Pressure also affects gases inside a body. On the surface, gases produced by decay can cause bloating, rupturing tissues, and speeding up destruction. In deep water, pressure keeps those gases compressed. They cannot expand the way they do in air. Without that internal ballooning, bodies maintain their shape longer, and tissues stay intact instead of tearing themselves apart from the inside like an overinflated pool toy. This has enormous consequences for preservation. Shape matters. Structure matters. The longer an organism maintains its original form, the more likely it is that other preserving processes can step in later. Pressure buys time. And in the deep ocean, time is the most valuable currency there is. It is important to understand that pressure is not acting alone. It is not freezing creatures in place or magically fossilizing them on contact. What it does is quieter and more subtle. It reduces activity. It dampens biological enthusiasm. It turns a normally aggressive breakdown process into something slow, restrained, and oddly orderly. There is a reason scientists refer to pressure as one of the defining features of deep-sea environments, rather than just a physical inconvenience. It reshapes life, death, and everything in between. Organisms that live there evolve to function under it. Organisms that die there are preserved by it. Pressure becomes a kind of environmental filter, deciding which processes are allowed to operate and which are politely but firmly shut down. So when a soft-bodied creature sinks into the abyss, pressure does not destroy it. It restrains the forces that would normally erase it. It presses pause on biology's usual chaos. It tells bacteria to slow down, tells scavengers to stay away, and tells decay that it can wait its turn. The ocean's hug may be crushing, but it is also strangely protective. And in the deep, being squeezed by the weight of the world is sometimes the very thing that lets a fragile creature linger far longer than anyone ever expected. If pressure is the deep ocean's firm handshake, temperature is its icy stare. Once a creature sinks past the reach of sunlight, it enters a world where warmth is no longer part of the deal. The deep sea is cold in a way that feels permanent, like the planet forgot to turn the thermostat back up after winter and just moved on. Temperatures hover just above freezing, and they stay there with stubborn consistency for millions of years. No seasons, no heat waves, just cold, always. This cold is not dramatic. There is no flash freezing moment where a creature turns into a biological popsicle on the way down. Instead, the temperature drops gradually, layer by layer, until the environment settles into a steady chill. And that steadiness is exactly what makes it so powerful. In biology, warmth equals speed, cold equals patience, and the deep ocean is nothing if not patient. Chemical reactions slow down when temperatures drop. This is basic chemistry, but in the deep sea, it becomes a preservation strategy on a planetary scale. The reactions that normally cause tissues to break apart, proteins to unravel, and cells to lose their structure all happen far more slowly in cold conditions. It is not that these processes stop. They just take their time, like they are waiting for instructions that never arrive. Think about food left out on a kitchen counter versus food stored in a freezer. The ingredients are the same. The outcome is very different. Cold does not prevent decay forever, but it stretches the timeline so dramatically that the difference feels magical. In the deep ocean, that stretching happens over centuries, millennia, and longer. A creature that would be unrecognizable in days on land can retain its form long enough for other preserving forces to step in. Cold also stabilizes tissues in subtle ways. Cellular membranes, which become floppy and fragile at higher temperatures, maintain their integrity longer in the cold. Structural proteins hold their shape. Delicate features that would normally collapse under their own softness stay recognizable. This is one of the reasons deep-sea fossils can preserve astonishing detail, including outlines, textures, and sometimes even impressions of internal anatomy. Another strange effect of deep-sea cold is how predictable it is. On land and in shallow water, temperature swings constantly. Day and night, summer and winter, storms and heat waves all create stress that accelerates breakdown. In the deep ocean, none of that happens. The temperature you experience today is essentially the same temperature a creature experienced millions of years ago. That kind of environmental boredom turns out to be fantastic for long-term preservation. Cold also influences how fluids move through tissues. In warmer environments, fluids shift quickly, carrying dissolved compounds that can weaken structures and speed up collapse. In near-freezing water, fluid movement slows. This helps tissues keep their original arrangement longer, reducing distortion and damage during the critical early stages after death. What makes this especially remarkable is how cold works without being selective. It does not care whether a creature has bones, shells, or nothing solid at all. Everything is slowed equally. This levels the playing field for soft-bodied organisms that are usually erased from history. In the cold, deep sea, being squishy is no longer an automatic death sentence for your legacy. There is also an energy angle to all of this. Cold environments demand more energy from organisms to maintain activity. In the deep sea, energy is scarce to begin with. This creates an ecosystem where everything moves cautiously and nothing is wasted. After death, that same energy scarcity means fewer interactions, fewer disturbances, and fewer processes acting on remains. The cold reinforces an already slow-motion world. It is important to note that this is not the same as freezing in ice. Ice crystals can rupture cells and damage tissues. The deep ocean avoids that problem by staying just above freezing, cold enough to slow chemistry, but not cold enough to tear structures apart. It is a narrow sweet spot, and the ocean sits in it perfectly. So when a creature settles onto the deep sea floor, the cold wraps around it like a long-term storage plan it never signed up for. Time stretches, change hesitates. The organism's shape lingers, quietly defying the usual urgency of decay. The deep sea does not preserve life by acting fast. It preserves life by refusing to hurry. And in a world where almost everything is in a rush to disappear, that refusal makes all the difference. If pressure squeezes and cold slows, oxygen decides who even gets to play the game. In many parts of the deep ocean, oxygen is in such short supply that it might as well be an exclusive luxury item. These regions, known as oxygen poor zones, are not dramatic voids or empty spaces. They are water masses that look perfectly normal, but quietly sabotage one of the most important ingredients of decay. Most of the organisms responsible for breaking down dead material rely on oxygen to do their work efficiently. Oxygen fuels their metabolism. It allows them to tear apart complex molecules and release energy at high speed. Remove oxygen, and suddenly those biological engines start coughing and sputtering. They do not shut down completely, but they slow to a crawl, like a sports car forced to run on cooking oil. In oxygen-poor environments, the usual microbial all-stars are replaced by specialists that can survive without oxygen. These microbes are real overachievers, but they are also slower and less efficient at breaking down tissues. Their metabolic pathways extract less energy, which means every step of decay takes longer, much longer. The result is not the absence of decay, but a dramatic reduction in its pace. This has huge consequences for preservation. The early stages after death are critical. This is when tissues are most vulnerable, when structures collapse, and when fine details are usually lost. In oxygen-poor zones, that vulnerable window stretches out. Tissues remain intact long enough for impressions to form, outlines to be preserved, and chemical changes to stabilize structures instead of destroying them. Oxygen-poor zones often form in deep basins or regions where water circulation is limited. Without regular mixing, oxygen from the surface cannot easily reach the depths. Over time, respiration by organisms uses up what little oxygen is available, and it is not replaced. The water becomes quietly suffocating, not just for animals, but for decay itself. One of the strangest aspects of these zones is how selective they are. Large animals may struggle or die quickly if they wander in, but once dead, their remains are treated with surprising care by the environment. The very conditions that make life difficult make preservation easier. It is an ironic trade-off, and the deep ocean is full of those. Without oxygen, many of the chemical reactions that normally discolor, weaken, and dissolve tissues either slow dramatically or follow entirely different pathways. Pigments can persist. Soft tissues can retain their shape. Even delicate features that would normally vanish early can leave behind impressions or mineralized traces. Oxygen-poor zones also discourage many would-be consumers of dead material. Animals that rely on oxygen-rich water for active feeding simply avoid these areas or cannot survive in them for long. This reduces physical disturbance. Bodies are less likely to be torn apart, scattered, or fragmented. They stay where they fall, which is exactly what preservation needs. These environments essentially turn the seafloor into a biological pause button, not a stop button, but a pause. Everything is still happening, just at a speed so slow it feels almost frozen. This is where time becomes a tool rather than an enemy. What makes oxygen-poor zones especially important is that they allow preservation of organisms that would otherwise leave no trace. Creatures with no hard parts, no durable structures, and no obvious fossil potential suddenly have a fighting chance. Their tissues linger long enough for subtle chemical changes to lock in their shape before it disappears. Over geological time, sediments accumulate gently in these zones, layering over preserved remains without stirring them up. The lack of oxygen prevents burrowing organisms from churning the sediment, keeping layers neat and undisturbed. Each layer becomes a page in a book that no one reads for millions of years. It is easy to think of oxygen as purely life-giving, and in most contexts, it is. But in the deep ocean, its absence becomes a curator. It limits chaos. It restrains destruction. It creates conditions where the usual rush toward oblivion is replaced by a slow, careful drift. So when scientists uncover fossils from oxygen-poor marine environments, they are not just finding preserved creatures. They are finding moments where the ocean briefly hit pause, held its breath, and quietly allowed history to stay intact far longer than it ever should have. Sometimes, preservation is not about slowing things down. Sometimes, it is about acting fast. In the deep ocean, one of the most effective ways a creature escapes destruction is by getting buried almost immediately. No waiting, no lingering. Just a sudden, overwhelming blanket of sediment that turns an exposed body into a hidden one before the rest of the ecosystem even notices. The seafloor is not a calm, motionless place. It may look peaceful, but it is constantly receiving material from above. Fine particles drift down like underwater snow. Rivers dump massive loads of sediment into the ocean. Continental shelves slump and collapse. Earthquakes shake loose entire sections of seabed. When these events happen, they can move astonishing amounts of mud and sand in a very short time. For a creature that has just died, being in the wrong place at the wrong time becomes the right place at the right time. A sudden sediment flow can bury a body in minutes or even seconds. This kind of rapid burial is one of the strongest predictors of exceptional preservation, especially for soft-bodied organisms that normally disappear almost instantly. Once buried, a body is effectively removed from the biological spotlight. Scavengers cannot reach it. Currents cannot tear it apart. Physical disturbance drops dramatically. The sediment acts like a protective shell, even though it is made of loose particles. The key is isolation. Burial cuts off access. Fine-grained sediments are especially important here. Mud and silt can settle tightly around a body, conforming to its shape and filling small spaces. This creates detailed impressions that preserve outlines, textures, and sometimes even subtle anatomical features. It is nature's version of a mold, formed not from intention, but from gravity and patience. Underwater landslides, known as turbidity currents, play a dramatic role in this process. These are fast-moving flows of sediment-laden water that surge down slopes on the seafloor. They can travel for hundreds of kilometers, carrying everything in their path. When they slow down, they dump their load in thick layers. Anything caught beneath that dump is sealed away instantly, like a bug in amber, except wetter and significantly less glamorous. Rapid burial also stabilizes the physical structure of a body. Without burial, soft tissues collapse under their own weight, or are deformed by currents. Sediment provides support, holding structures in place during the critical early stages after death. This increases the chances that original shapes are preserved long enough for further changes to lock them in. Another advantage of burial is chemical buffering. Sediment can limit exposure to surrounding seawater, reducing certain chemical reactions that would otherwise accelerate tissue breakdown. It creates a microenvironment around the body, one that can behave very differently from the open water above. Importantly, burial does not have to be deep to be effective. Even a thin layer can dramatically reduce biological activity. The key is speed. A slow accumulation allows time for destruction. A fast one denies it. Timing, not thickness, is what matters most. Some of the most spectacular marine fossil sites in the world owe their existence to rapid burial events. These sites preserve creatures in lifelike poses, sometimes frozen mid-movement, as if surprised by their own preservation. These are not snapshots of peaceful death. They are records of sudden geological chaos that just happen to do biology a favor. Rapid burial also explains why preservation can be uneven. Two creatures can die side by side, but only one ends up buried quickly enough to be saved. The other is lost to time. Preservation is not fair. It is opportunistic. The ocean does not plan these events. Earthquakes, slope failures, and sediment flows are indifferent to biology. But when they intersect with life and death, they create moments where the usual erasure of soft tissue is interrupted. In these moments, the seafloor becomes a vault, mud becomes a shield, sand becomes a shroud, and a creature that should have vanished instead becomes part of the planet's long-term memory. All because the ocean decided to tidy up a little too quickly. If sediment burial is a cozy blanket, volcanic ash is a sudden, dramatic curtain drop. One moment, life is going about its slow, deep-sea business. The next, the ocean floor is being showered with microscopic shards of rock, glass, and minerals that fall from the sky of the sea with zero warning and absolutely no chill. Underwater volcanism is one of the most violent forces the ocean has to offer, and paradoxically, one of the most precise when it comes to preservation. Submarine volcanoes do not erupt the same way land volcanoes do. Water suppresses explosive blasts, but that does not make these eruptions gentle. Instead, lava meets seawater and shatters, producing clouds of fine ash that spread rapidly through the surrounding water. These particles settle quickly and evenly, forming thin but incredibly effective layers over the sea floor. For organisms caught in the fallout, ash burial happens fast. There is no gradual accumulation, no time for tissues to slump or distort. The ash settles into every fold, groove, and surface detail, capturing shapes with astonishing fidelity. It is less like burial and more like casting, as if the organism has been dipped in geological plaster. What makes volcanic ash uniquely powerful as a preserving agent is its texture. Ash particles are extremely fine, often much finer than typical marine sediments. This allows them to record delicate features that would otherwise be lost, including soft tissue outlines and subtle surface textures. Even fragile structures can leave behind crisp impressions, locked in place before they have a chance to degrade. Ash layers also create sharp boundaries in the geological record. One moment, there is normal seafloor sediment, and then suddenly, there is ash. This makes it easy for scientists to identify preservation events and link them to specific volcanic episodes. Each ash layer is a timestamp, a geological exclamation point marking a moment when the ocean floor was abruptly rewritten. Underwater eruptions can also generate rapid temperature changes locally, but the key to preservation is not heat. It is speed and isolation. Ash falls fast, cutting off access to scavengers and stabilizing physical structures before collapse. It is the immediacy that matters. Death and preservation become nearly simultaneous. In some cases, ash layers are later compacted and altered, but their original role as a protective seal remains evident. The organisms beneath them are shielded from physical disturbance and chemical exchange. Over time, the ash itself can harden into rock, turning a once soft blanket into a durable lid. There is also an artistic element to ash preservation that scientists quietly admire. The resulting fossils often look like negative space sculptures, with bodies preserved as impressions rather than solid remains. These impressions can be so detailed that they feel intimate, almost intrusive, as if the stone remembers exactly how the organism once lay. Underwater volcanic activity is common along mid-ocean ridges and tectonic boundaries, meaning these preservation opportunities are not rare accidents. They are recurring features of Earth's geology. Each eruption has the potential to freeze a moment of biological time, capturing whatever happened to be living, dying, or drifting nearby. The irony is impossible to ignore. Volcanic eruptions are agents of destruction, yet here they are acting as curators. They erase habitats, alter chemistry, and reshape landscapes. But they also create some of the most detailed records of ancient life we have. The same force that ends lives ensures they are not forgotten. Volcanic ash does not discriminate. It preserves whatever it touches, regardless of evolutionary importance or aesthetic appeal. Small creatures, soft-bodied organisms, and obscure life forms all get equal treatment. In a way, ash is the most democratic preserver the ocean has. When scientists uncover fossils associated with ash layers, they are looking at snapshots taken without permission. These are not posed scenes, they are interruptions. Life mid-flow, stopped by geology and held in place long enough for stone to remember it. So yes, the organisms died. Often suddenly, sometimes catastrophically. But in doing so, they became art. Art made of ash, pressure, and time. Art that whispers, millions of years later, that the ocean never forgets a good, dramatic ending. After a body survives the chaos of death and avoids being torn apart, eaten, or erased, the ocean has another trick waiting. It is quieter than eruptions and less dramatic than landslides, but far more meticulous. This is where chemistry steps in, rolls up its sleeves, and begins the slow, obsessive work of turning life into stone without losing the details that made it recognizable in the first place. On the ocean floor, water is not just water. It is a moving soup of dissolved minerals, ions, and chemical gradients that interact constantly with anything they touch. When a dead organism rests within sediment, tiny chemical imbalances form almost immediately. Tissues begin to break down, releasing compounds into their immediate surroundings. These changes alter the local chemistry in subtle but powerful ways. Minerals dissolved in seawater respond to these chemical shifts. Under the right conditions, they begin to precipitate out of solution and deposit themselves onto and within the remains. This does not happen all at once. It happens incrementally, sometimes over thousands of years. As minerals infiltrate spaces left behind by decaying cells. What makes this process remarkable is its precision. Minerals can replicate structures at microscopic scales, preserving shapes down to the level of individual tissues. It is not a simple coating, it is replacement. As organic material disappears, minerals move in, occupying the same space and maintaining the same form. Imagine rebuilding a house brick by brick while removing the original materials at the exact same pace. That is the level of patience involved. Different minerals create different kinds of preservation, depending on the surrounding environment. Silica, carbonates, and other mineral compounds can all play a role. The specific chemistry of the sediment and water determines which minerals dominate, and that choice influences the final appearance of the fossil. Some look glassy and smooth, others appear chalky or crystalline. All of them are stone interpretations of something that was once soft. This mineral replacement is especially important for preserving features that would otherwise collapse. Muscles, organs, and connective tissues are structurally weak, but when minerals reinforce them from the inside, they gain durability. Over time, the original biological material vanishes entirely, leaving behind a mineral twin that can survive geological punishment. The process requires stability. It cannot occur in environments where remains are constantly disturbed or exposed. That is why it is most effective on calm seafloors, where sediments stay in place and chemical conditions remain relatively consistent. The ocean floor becomes a workshop, and chemistry becomes the craftsman. One of the most fascinating aspects of this transformation is that it captures not just shape, but sometimes internal organization. Layered tissues, segmented bodies, and even fine anatomical boundaries can be preserved. These fossils do not just tell us what an organism looked like. They tell us how it was built. This is where the ocean becomes a collaborator rather than just a container. The chemistry of seawater, the composition of sediments, and the slow release of compounds from decaying tissues all work together to create something new. Death is not the end of structure. It is the beginning of translation, from biology to geology. This translation is brutally honest. Minerals do not embellish. They do not improve. They copy. Every wrinkle, fold, and asymmetry is preserved without mercy. If the organism was weird, the fossil will be weird. If it was delicate, the fossil will show just how delicate it once was. And this is why these stone replicas are so valuable. They allow scientists to study organisms that left no other trace, creatures with no shells, no bones, and no obvious fossil potential suddenly become accessible. Their existence is confirmed not by imagination, but by mineralized fact. The ocean floor does not rush this process. It allows chemistry to work at its own pace, molecule by molecule, year after year. There is no deadline, no finish line, just gradual transformation until the organism is no longer flesh, but memory made solid. In the end, what remains is not a corpse, but a sculpture. One carved not by hands, but by water, chemistry, and time. A sculpture that proves the ocean does not just preserve life by hiding it. Sometimes it recreates it in stone, detail by detail, with the dedication of an artist who refuses to forget. On the ocean floor, some of the most powerful forces of preservation are also the smallest and least impressive looking. No explosions, no landslides, just layers of microbes doing what microbes do best, growing, spreading, and accidentally becoming incredible archivists. Microbial mats are thin, carpet-like communities of microorganisms that form on the seafloor. And when they encounter a dead organism, they can turn it into a sealed package of biological history. These mats form when conditions are just right. Nutrients are available, water movement is minimal, and the seafloor stays relatively undisturbed. Microbes begin to multiply, stacking themselves into layered communities. Each layer has its own chemical behavior, creating tiny gradients of compounds that change dramatically over just a few millimeters. To the naked eye, they look unimpressive. To preservation, they are game-changing. When a dead organism settles onto a mat or becomes overgrown by one, the microbes do something remarkable. They spread across its surface, conforming to every contour. Within a short time, the body is effectively wrapped in a living film. This film acts as a barrier between the remains and the surrounding water, limiting the exchange of chemicals and gases. One of the most important effects of this microbial wrapping is how it alters the immediate environment around the body. As the microbes metabolize nutrients, they consume available compounds and release byproducts that change local chemistry. This creates conditions that are unfriendly to many of the organisms responsible for rapid decay. The usual decomposers find themselves in hostile territory, where their efficiency drops dramatically. Microbial mats also stabilize physical structures. By covering surfaces tightly, they prevent tissues from being torn apart by minor currents or disturbances. They hold everything in place during the most vulnerable phase after death, when collapse and distortion would normally erase important details. Over time, the mats can trap fine particles from the water, building thin layers of sediment directly on top of the remains. This adds another level of protection, reinforcing the seal and further isolating the body from its surroundings. What starts as a biological process becomes a combined biological and geological one. One of the most fascinating aspects of microbial mat preservation is how it captures surface detail. Because the mats grow directly over tissues, they record shapes with incredible precision. Even subtle textures can be preserved as impressions, later hardened by mineral deposition. This makes microbial mats especially important for preserving organisms with complex or delicate surfaces. These mats also play a role in controlling which chemical reactions occur near the remains. By creating steep gradients over very small distances, they can encourage certain minerals to form while discouraging others. This selective chemistry can help lock in structures before they are lost. It is important to understand that microbial mats are not intentionally preserving anything. They are simply exploiting a food source and expanding their territory. Preservation is a side effect, not a goal. And yet, this accidental role makes them some of the most effective preservers of soft-bodied life in the fossil record. Microbial mats are ancient. They existed long before animals developed hard parts, and for much of Earth's history they dominated shallow and deep environments alike. This makes them crucial for understanding early life, when most organisms were soft, and preservation would otherwise be nearly impossible. In environments where microbial mats thrive, the seafloor becomes a patchwork of living films and trapped remains. Each mat is a micro-ecosystem, quietly rewriting the rules of decay on a very small scale. Together, they create conditions where the usual erasure of biological information is interrupted. The irony is hard to miss. Microbes are usually the villains of decay, the first responders that dismantle dead organisms. In microbial mats, those same microbes become gatekeepers, controlling access and slowing the destruction they usually cause. They ruin the party for other bacteria, and in doing so, they save the guest of honor. So while volcanic ash makes a dramatic entrance, and minerals sculpt patiently over millennia, microbial mats work silently and efficiently. They cling, they seal, they protect, and without ever intending to, they turn the ocean floor into a place where even the softest forms of life can leave a lasting impression. It is easy to imagine the deep sea as a place where anything dead is instantly devoured by an army of desperate, ravenous creatures. After all, food is scarce, energy is precious, and life down there is famously tough. Surely nothing edible lasts long. And yet, again and again, scientists find remains that look oddly untouched, resting on the sea floor as if no one bothered to RSVP to the feast. The reason is simple and deeply unintuitive. Deep-sea scavengers are not indiscriminate vacuum cleaners. They are cautious, selective, and sometimes downright uninterested. In the deep ocean, eating is not just about hunger. It is about risk, energy balance, and survival in an environment that punishes bad decisions harshly. Deep-sea animals live on a tight energy budget. There is no steady rain of food from above, and meals can be unpredictable. Every movement, every bite, and every digestive effort costs energy. If the payoff is not worth it, the smartest move is to walk away. This makes scavengers extremely picky, even when food seems scarce. Some remains are simply too difficult to process. Tough tissues, chemically altered surfaces, or unfamiliar structures can make a corpse more trouble than it is worth. If breaking it down requires too much effort or offers too little nutritional return, scavengers may sample briefly and then abandon it. In the deep sea, curiosity is expensive. Environmental hostility also plays a huge role. Certain areas of the ocean floor are chemically or physically extreme, creating conditions that few animals tolerate for long. High concentrations of certain compounds, unstable substrates, or uncomfortable chemical gradients can make lingering risky. A scavenger might approach a corpse, assess the surroundings, and decide that the environment itself is the bigger threat. Some deep-sea scavengers are also surprisingly specialized. They are adapted to particular food sources and feeding strategies, not general-purpose dining. When they encounter something outside their usual menu, they may not have the tools or instincts to exploit it efficiently. Evolution, it turns out, does not train animals for Buffett-style dining in every situation. Another factor is competition. In environments where scavengers are rare or widely spaced, a corpse may simply go unnoticed for a long time. The deep ocean is vast, and encounters are not guaranteed. A body can rest undisturbed, not because it is undesirable, but because no one happened to find it during the critical early window. Even when scavengers do find remains, they often feed slowly. There is no rush. Energy conservation takes priority over speed. This slow feeding can leave large portions of a body intact for extended periods, increasing the chance that preservation processes take over before complete destruction occurs. There is also the issue of danger. A corpse can attract other scavengers, predators, or competitors. Approaching and feeding can increase the risk of confrontation. In an environment where escape is costly and injuries can be fatal, avoiding conflict is often the safest strategy. Sometimes, not eating is the smartest move. Certain environments amplify all of these factors. In places where conditions are harsh or unstable, scavengers may be even more reluctant to invest time and energy. The environment itself becomes a deterrent, turning potential meals into biological no-go zones. This selective feeding behavior has enormous implications for preservation. When scavengers avoid or only partially consume remains, bodies stay intact longer. This increases the chances that other preserving mechanisms lock in their structure. In this way, the absence of scavenging is just as important as the presence of protective conditions. It is tempting to think of scavengers as the cleanup crew that erases evidence of death. In the deep sea, they are more like cautious inspectors, evaluating each opportunity with skepticism. Hunger does not override caution. Survival comes first. So when scientists find well-preserved remains on the ocean floor, it is not always because the environment protected them directly. Sometimes, it is because the local residents took one look, did the math, and decided that corpse was simply not worth the trouble. At some point in the long journey from life to fossil, the ocean can decide to get incredibly specific. Not just preserving outlines or impressions, but capturing tissues with such precision that the result feels unsettlingly lifelike. This is the realm of phosphatization, a preservation process that turns biological structures into phosphate minerals with astonishing fidelity, sometimes down to microscopic detail. Phosphatization begins with phosphorus, an element essential to life and conveniently abundant in marine environments. Phosphorus is a key component of DNA, cell membranes, and many metabolic processes. When an organism dies, phosphorus-rich compounds are released as tissues begin to break down. Under the right conditions, this creates a localized surge of phosphate in the immediate environment surrounding the remains. This surge sets the stage for mineralization. Phosphate minerals begin to precipitate out of solution, depositing themselves directly onto and within tissues. Unlike some other mineralization processes, phosphatization can happen relatively quickly on geological timescales. This speed is critical. It allows structures to be reinforced before they collapse or lose definition. What makes phosphatization particularly impressive is its ability to preserve soft tissues. Muscles, organs, and even cellular structures can be mineralized with extraordinary detail. This happens because phosphate minerals can nucleate at very small scales, filling tiny spaces and replicating fine anatomical features. The result is a fossil that looks less like a rock and more like a biological cast, frozen in mid-existence. Phosphatization often thrives in environments where organic matter is abundant and conditions favor rapid chemical change. The breakdown of tissues fuels the process, creating a feedback loop where decay itself drives preservation. The organism, in a final act of irony, supplies the ingredients needed to save its own structure. Bones and teeth, which already contain phosphate in life, are especially well suited to this process. Their original mineral framework can act as a template, guiding additional phosphate deposition and enhancing preservation. But phosphatization is not limited to hard parts. Soft tissues, which usually vanish early, can be captured with equal precision when conditions align. One of the most striking aspects of phosphatized fossils is how three-dimensional they can be. Instead of flattened impressions, these fossils often retain volume, texture, and depth. Features like muscle bundles, digestive structures, and even fine surface details can remain recognizable. It is the kind of preservation that makes scientists pause before touching, half expecting the specimen to move. Phosphatization also preserves information at scales invisible to the naked eye. Microscopic structures, such as cellular organization and tissue layering, can survive long enough to be studied millions of years later. This opens windows into ancient biology that would otherwise be completely closed. This process is not common everywhere. It requires a specific combination of chemical conditions, timing, and environmental stability. But when it occurs, it produces some of the most informative fossils in the marine record. These are the fossils that rewrite textbooks, challenge assumptions, and reveal unexpected complexity in ancient life. Phosphatized fossils often appear in clusters, reflecting localized conditions that favored the process. These clusters become treasure troves for scientists, offering detailed snapshots of ecosystems rather than isolated specimens. Each fossil adds context to the others, building a more complete picture of life long gone. The eerie realism of phosphatized fossils is part of their power. They bridge the gap between living organism and stone artifact in a way that feels almost uncanny. They do not just suggest what an organism looked like. They show it with clarity that feels unfairly intimate across millions of years. In the end, phosphatization is a reminder that preservation is not always about slow fading. Sometimes it is about rapid capture, a chemical handshake between life and geology that freezes a moment so precisely that, even now, the fossil seems poised between past and present, still waiting for a pulse that will never come. Some places in the ocean are so hostile that life does not slowly struggle and adapt. It simply stops. Anoxic basins are deep, isolated pockets of seawater where oxygen is completely absent, not just scarce, but gone. These basins are lethal traps, silent bowls where animals wander in and die with alarming speed. And yet, once death occurs, these same basins become some of the most effective preservation chambers the ocean has ever built. Anoxic basins form when dense water becomes trapped in deep depressions on the seafloor. Because this water is heavier than the layers above it, it does not mix. Over time, any oxygen present is consumed, and none is replaced. The basin becomes a stable, suffocating environment, sealed off from the rest of the ocean, like a forgotten room at the bottom of the world. When a creature enters one of these basins, the outcome is swift. Without oxygen, vital biological processes fail almost immediately. Fish, crustaceans, and other mobile organisms do not linger. They cross an invisible boundary and perish quickly, often sinking straight down into the basin's depths. This rapid death plays a crucial role in preservation. There is no prolonged struggle, no extended period of stress that would damage tissues. Bodies settle gently, often in lifelike positions, as if they simply powered down. The transition from life to stillness is abrupt, and that abruptness helps maintain structure. Once at rest, the remains face an environment where the usual agents of decay are effectively absent. The lack of oxygen eliminates most aerobic decomposers entirely. The microbial community is drastically simplified, dominated by organisms that operate slowly and inefficiently. Physical disturbance is also minimal, as these basins are typically calm and isolated. Anoxic basins are also chemically distinct. Without oxygen, certain chemical reactions that would normally alter or destroy tissues cannot proceed. This allows pigments, soft tissues, and fine anatomical details to persist far longer than they would elsewhere. The water itself becomes part of the preservation process. Sedimentation in anoxic basins is often gentle and continuous. Fine particles settle slowly, layering over remains without stirring them up. Because burrowing organisms cannot survive in these conditions, the sediment remains undisturbed. Each layer stacks neatly on top of the last, building a stratified archive of biological history. What makes anoxic basins especially powerful is their consistency. Conditions within them can remain stable for thousands or even millions of years. This long-term stability allows preservation processes to proceed uninterrupted, turning brief moments of death into enduring records. These basins act like natural museums, but with a dark sense of humour. The exhibit opens with instant death and closes with immaculate preservation. The very features that make the environment uninhabitable make it ideal for fossil formation. Some of the most famous examples of exceptional marine preservation come from anoxic basin deposits. In these sites, organisms appear frozen in time, their bodies intact, their positions undisturbed. Scientists can study not just what lived there, but how they moved, fed, and interacted before their final moments. Anoxic basins also preserve ecological context. Because remains are not scattered or destroyed, entire assemblages can be preserved together. This allows researchers to reconstruct ancient ecosystems with remarkable confidence, seeing not just isolated species, but communities captured in a single deadly moment. It is difficult to overstate the irony. Anoxic basins are among the most dangerous places in the ocean, yet they are also among the most generous to science. They take lives quickly, then guard those lives with unwavering dedication. In the end, these basins remind us that preservation is not about kindness. It is about conditions. And sometimes, the worst places on Earth turn out to be the best at remembering what once lived there. Scattered across the ocean floor are places that look unremarkable at first glance, but behave like chemical factories running non-stop. These are methane seeps and cold seeps, regions where fluids rich in methane and other compounds slowly leak out of the seafloor. They are not hot, explosive, or dramatic. They are quiet, persistent, and unbelievably good at turning dead organisms into stone. At these seeps, methane rises from beneath the seafloor and meets seawater in a delicate chemical dance. Specialized microbes thrive here, feeding on the methane and driving reactions that alter the surrounding chemistry. One of the most important outcomes of this process is the production of carbonate minerals, which begin to precipitate out of the water and harden into rock. For living organisms, cold seeps are oases. They support unique ecosystems fueled not by sunlight, but by chemistry. For dead organisms, they are something else entirely. When remains settle near a seep, the mineral-rich environment can encase them rapidly, forming hard mineral crusts that protect structures from collapse and destruction. This encasement works like an accidental coffin. As carbonate minerals accumulate, they build rigid frameworks around anything in their path. Shells, bones, and even soft tissues can become enclosed within these mineral structures, shielding them from physical disturbance and biological attack. Once sealed, the remains are effectively locked away. The speed of mineral formation at seeps is crucial. Chemical reactions driven by methane consumption can proceed quickly, at least by geological standards. This allows mineral crusts to form while tissues still retain their shape. The result is preservation that captures three-dimensional structure rather than flattened impressions. Cold seeps also create distinct microenvironments. Chemical conditions can change sharply over very short distances, producing zones where preservation is favored. An organism only needs to be in the right spot at the right time to benefit. Preservation here is highly localized and intensely dependent on chemistry. Another fascinating aspect of seep preservation is how it can capture ecological interactions. Because seeps support dense communities, multiple organisms can be preserved together, entombed within the same mineral structures. These fossils preserve not just individuals, but relationships, showing how species clustered around these chemical resources. The mineral crusts formed at seeps are tough. Once hardened, they resist erosion, crushing, and chemical alteration. This durability allows seep-associated fossils to survive long after surrounding sediments have been altered or removed. The seeps build their own protective architecture. Methane seeps also leave behind distinctive geological signatures. The carbonate structures they create stand out in the rock record, making it easier for scientists to identify ancient seep environments. Finding fossils within these structures provides strong evidence of how preservation occurred and what conditions were present at the time. There is a poetic irony to seep preservation. Methane, a compound associated with decay and breakdown, becomes a driver of preservation. The same processes that recycle carbon back into the environment create mineral barriers that protect biological form. Destruction and preservation are two sides of the same chemical coin. Cold seeps do not preserve everything equally. Their influence is spatially limited, and many organisms never encounter them. But when they do, the results can be spectacular. Fossils from seep environments often retain remarkable detail and three-dimensional integrity, standing as stone monuments to chemical coincidence. In these places, the ocean does not gently archive life. It builds around it. It constructs rigid shells where none were intended, turning chemical leakage into architectural preservation. And in doing so, methane seeps and cold seeps quietly prove that sometimes the most unassuming places on the seafloor are also the most effective at remembering what once lived there. If preservation were a game of patience, the deep ocean would win every time. One of the greatest advantages the deep sea has is not any single dramatic process, but its sheer, stubborn refusal to change. While the surface of the planet is constantly being remodeled by weather, erosion, climate shifts, and biological chaos, the deep ocean operates on a very different schedule. Down there, stability is the default setting. On land, environments are restless. Rivers change course, mountains erode, forests burn, ice advances and retreats. Even shallow seas are dynamic, shaped by waves, tides, storms, and shifting coastlines. These constant changes churn sediments, expose remains, and destroy fragile structures. Preservation in such environments is a rare stroke of luck. The deep ocean, by contrast, is insulated from most of these forces. Waves do not reach it. Storms barely whisper down there. Seasonal changes are irrelevant. The seafloor experiences none of the daily or annual cycles that dominate surface environments. Once something settles, it tends to stay put. This stability is rooted in physics. Water absorbs and dissipates energy. By the time surface disturbances travel downward, their impact has faded to almost nothing. The deeper you go, the quieter the environment becomes. In the abyss, calm is not temporary. It is permanent. Because of this calm, sediments accumulate slowly and evenly. Layers build up without being reworked or disturbed. This allows preserved remains to stay buried and protected, rather than being re-exposed to destructive forces. Each new layer adds another page to the archive without erasing the previous ones. Biological activity is also reduced. The deep ocean supports life, but at lower densities and with slower dynamics than surface ecosystems. There are fewer organisms capable of disturbing the sediment, fewer interactions that might scatter or damage remains. This low-energy biological environment complements the physical calm. What makes this especially powerful is the timescale involved. The deep ocean can maintain similar conditions for millions of years. While continents drift, collide, and tear apart above, the abyssal plains below change only gradually. Preserved organisms can sit undisturbed through entire chapters of Earth's history. This long-term stability allows preservation processes to complete their work. Chemical transformations, mineralization, and sediment accumulation all require time. In dynamic environments, these processes are often interrupted. In the deep ocean, they proceed uninterrupted, step by slow step. The contrast with the surface is almost comical. Above the waves, landscapes are constantly rearranged. Ice ages scrape continents clean. Rivers carve valleys. Forests rise and fall. Below, a dead organism can remain exactly where it fell, unbothered by the chaos above, like a forgotten item at the bottom of a moving box that no one opens for millions of years. This stability also means that preserved remains are less likely to be destroyed after formation. Once a fossil forms in the deep ocean, it has a good chance of staying intact until tectonic forces eventually intervene. Even then, the journey from seafloor to surface can be surprisingly gentle, preserving structures through uplift and exposure. Deep ocean stability does not mean nothing ever happens. Tectonic activity, sediment flows, and chemical changes still occur. But compared to the surface, these events are infrequent and localized. Most of the deep sea floor spends most of its existence in a state of quiet persistence. This is why the deep ocean is such a reliable archive. It does not constantly overwrite its own history. It layers it. Each generation of preserved life rests beneath the next, creating a vertical timeline that spans unimaginable durations. So while continents rearrange themselves like impatient interior designers, the deep ocean remains content with its original layout. It keeps what it is given and leaves it alone. And in doing so, it ensures that creatures long gone can remain exactly where they were, waiting patiently for a future species curious enough to come looking. For a long time, paleontology had a quiet but stubborn bias. If you did not have bones, shells, or something hard and durable, history was not going to remember you. Soft-bodied creatures were assumed to be evolutionary ghosts, important in life, but invisible in death. Jellyfish, worms, and squishy early animals were treated like supporting characters who never made it into the final cut. Then the deep sea started proving everyone wrong. When scientists began uncovering fossil sites formed in deep marine environments, they found something that felt almost illegal. Entire communities of soft-bodied organisms preserved in detail so clear it bordered on rude. These were not vague smudges or hopeful interpretations. These were recognizable bodies, shapes, and structures that should not have survived even a week, let alone hundreds of millions of years. Some of the most famous of these sites revealed ancient jellyfish, preserved with their bell shapes and trailing forms intact. Jellyfish are basically made of water and optimism. They have no bones, no shells, and no respect for fossilization rules. Yet here they were, flattened into stone, but unmistakably jellyfish, like nature forgot to hit delete. Worms were another shock. Segmented, soft, and easily destroyed, worms were thought to be nearly impossible to fossilize in any meaningful way. Deep-sea fossil sites changed that assumption overnight. Scientists found worms preserved with clear body outlines, segmentation, and sometimes even internal structures hinted at by mineral patterns. These were not lucky accidents. They were proof that the deep ocean had been quietly archiving soft life all along. What made these sites especially important was not just what they preserved, but what they represented. These fossils showed entire ecosystems, not just isolated specimens. Soft-bodied creatures appeared alongside other organisms, revealing interactions, diversity, and complexity that had been completely missing from the fossil record before. These discoveries forced scientists to rethink early animal evolution. Without soft-bodied fossils, early life looked simpler and more rigid than it actually was. With them, the picture exploded into complexity. Body plans experimented wildly. Forms appeared, vanished, and reappeared. The deep sea revealed that early ecosystems were bustling, inventive, and anything but boring. One of the most startling realizations was that soft-bodied preservation was not a one-time fluke. Similar fossil sites appeared in different regions and different time periods, all pointing to deep marine conditions as a recurring refuge for delicate life. The ocean was not just preserving exceptions, it was preserving patterns. These sites also challenged assumptions about where major evolutionary innovations occurred. Many soft-bodied fossils showed features associated with advanced movement, feeding, and sensory abilities. This suggested that evolutionary experimentation was happening earlier and more broadly than previously believed. The deep ocean had been hosting biological innovation long before it was fashionable. There was also a philosophical shift. Paleontologists had to accept that absence of evidence was not evidence of absence. Just because soft-bodied organisms were missing from the record did not mean they were rare or insignificant. It meant the record was incomplete. The deep sea, it turned out, had been holding on to the missing chapters. What makes these fossil sites even more astonishing is their emotional impact. Seeing a jellyfish fossilized feels wrong in a way that a dinosaur bone never does. It collapses the distance between ancient and modern life. Jellyfish today still look like their ancient counterparts, drifting through oceans with the same indifferent grace. The fossil feels less like a relic and more like a paused moment. These discoveries reshaped how scientists search for fossils. Instead of focusing only on environments that preserve hard parts, researchers began targeting deep marine deposits with renewed interest. The hunt expanded, and with it, our understanding of life's history. In the end, these famous deep-sea fossil sites did more than surprise scientists. They humbled them. They revealed that the ocean had been quietly preserving the most fragile stories of life while we were busy looking elsewhere. Jellyfish, worms, and other soft-bodied creatures did stand a chance after all. They just needed the right place to be remembered. Sunlight is usually treated as the hero of life on Earth. It fuels plants, drives food webs, and powers nearly everything that moves, grows, or eats. But in the deep ocean, sunlight never arrives, and that absence changes everything. Without light, ecosystems behave differently. They move more slowly, grow more cautiously, and generate far less chaos. And that calm, uneventful biological rhythm turns out to be fantastic for preservation. In sunlit environments, energy flows freely. Photosynthesis creates abundant food, which supports dense populations and fast-paced interactions. Predators chase prey, scavengers swarm remains, and ecosystems stay in constant motion. This activity is great for life, but terrible for long-term preservation. Anything that dies is quickly recycled. The deep ocean operates on an entirely different energy economy. Without sunlight, there is no photosynthesis. Food arrives indirectly, often in small, irregular pulses. This scarcity shapes behavior. Organisms cannot afford to move constantly or waste energy. Everything becomes more deliberate. This low energy setting produces ecosystems that are quieter, both literally and biologically. Fewer animals are present, and those that are tend to move slowly and interact infrequently. There is no daily rush, no seasonal bloom, no explosive population growth. Life ticks along at a measured pace, like a town where nothing ever really happens. For a dead organism, this lack of biological commotion is crucial. Fewer interactions mean fewer chances for disturbance. Remains are less likely to be bumped, torn apart, or scattered. They settle into the seafloor and are largely left alone, simply because there is not much going on around them. The absence of sunlight also means there are fewer organisms whose entire lifestyle revolves around rapid consumption. Surface ecosystems are built around speed and efficiency. Deep-sea ecosystems are built around conservation and patience. This fundamental difference reduces the biological pressure on remains. Darkness also affects behavior. Many deep-sea animals rely on senses other than sight. They detect food chemically or through vibrations. This makes encounters less frequent and more localized. A corpse does not broadcast its presence across the ecosystem the way it might in a visually driven environment. Another effect of darkness is predictability. Without day-night cycles, biological rhythms stabilize. There are no daily surges in activity, no dawn and dusk feeding frenzies. This stability keeps the seafloor calm over long periods, creating ideal conditions for preservation processes to proceed uninterrupted. The lack of sunlight also limits plant growth entirely. Without plants, there are no roots to disturb sediments, no seasonal die-offs to fuel microbial explosions, and no large-scale shifts in ecosystem structure. The deep seafloor remains physically and biologically undisturbed for extended periods. This calm does not mean the deep ocean is lifeless. It is full of fascinating organisms, many of which are uniquely adapted to darkness. But their presence does not generate the same level of disruption seen in sunlit systems. They coexist with their environment rather than constantly reshaping it. For preservation, this is a gift. Once remains settle, they are rarely reworked. They are not churned by plant growth, trampled by large migrating herds, or exposed by erosion. They rest in place, often for millions of years. The deep ocean's darkness is not just the absence of light, it is the absence of urgency. Nothing needs to grow fast. Nothing needs to eat constantly. Nothing needs to change quickly. And in that slow, steady world, the past is allowed to linger. So while sunlight fuels life's brilliance at the surface, its absence below quietly protects life's memory. In the dark, chaos slows, calm prevails, and preserved remains are given the greatest gift possible: time without interruption. Not all parts of the ocean are created equal when it comes to remembering the dead. In fact, the difference between shallow water and the deep sea can mean the difference between becoming a fossil and becoming absolutely nothing. Same animal, same death, wildly different outcomes. Location, it turns out, is everything. Shallow waters are energetic, chaotic, and biologically crowded. Sunlight pours in, driving high productivity. Algae bloom, plants grow, and food webs explode with life. Where there is abundant food, there is abundant activity, and where there is activity, there is disturbance, lots of it. In these environments, death triggers an immediate response. Scavengers arrive quickly, often within minutes or hours. Fish, crustaceans, and other opportunists converge, breaking bodies apart and dispersing tissues. What they do not consume directly is broken down by constant physical motion. Waves, tides, and currents batter remains relentlessly, tearing them into fragments and spreading them across the seafloor. Sediments in shallow water are rarely stable. They are constantly stirred by waves, storms, and the movement of animals. Burrowing organisms rework the seafloor, churning layers and destroying any chance of delicate preservation. Even if burial occurs, it is often temporary. Storms can strip sediments away, re-exposing remains to destruction. Temperature fluctuations add another layer of chaos. Shallow waters warm and cool rapidly, accelerating chemical reactions and biological activity. Seasonal changes drive cycles of growth and decay that constantly reshape the environment. Preservation struggles to gain a foothold amid this constant motion. Now contrast that with the deep sea. Light vanishes, energy inputs drop, life thins out. Physical forces lose their grip. Currents slow, sediments settle gently, and biological activity becomes restrained. Death here does not trigger an immediate feeding frenzy. It triggers not much at all. In the deep ocean, remains are more likely to stay where they fall. There are fewer animals capable of breaking them apart, and those that exist operate slowly and selectively. Physical disturbance is minimal. Sediments accumulate rather than churn. The environment, as a whole, is far more forgiving to fragile structures. The difference is so stark that scientists sometimes describe shallow water as a biological shredder and the deep sea as a biological archive. One destroys information as fast as possible, the other quietly stores it. This contrast explains why the fossil record is so biased. Most organisms live in shallow environments, but most exceptionally preserved fossils come from deeper settings. It is not that life avoided the shallows, it is that the shallows are terrible at keeping secrets. There is also a timing issue. In shallow water, the window for preservation is incredibly short. If protective conditions do not occur almost immediately, the opportunity is lost. In the deep sea, that window stretches out, giving preservation processes time to act. The shallow-deep divide also affects what kinds of organisms are preserved. Hard parts dominate shallow water fossils because they are the only things tough enough to survive the chaos. Soft-bodied life rarely leaves a trace. In the deep sea, softness is no longer a disadvantage. Delicate forms can persist long enough to be remembered. This difference has shaped our understanding of ancient life in profound ways. For years, scientists assumed early ecosystems were dominated by hard, simple forms, because that is what the shallow water record showed. Deep sea preservation revealed a much richer, softer, and more experimental world. Dying in shallow water is not a moral failing, but it is a historical one. The environment simply does not care about preserving your legacy. It is too busy moving, growing, and recycling. The deep sea, by contrast, has all the time in the world. So if preservation were a lottery, shallow water would sell millions of tickets and never pay out. The deep sea sells fewer tickets, but when it pays spectacularly. And that is why where you die in the ocean determines whether you vanish without a trace, or quietly wait to be rediscovered millions of years later. Once a creature has been preserved, buried, mineralized, sealed, lifted, and finally exposed, it does not just sit there looking impressive. It talks. Not out loud, unfortunately, but in a language scientists have learned to read with increasing fluency. Preserved marine creatures are not just remnants of life. They are messengers, carrying detailed information about oceans that no longer exist and climates that shaped worlds long gone. Every preserved organism is a data packet from the past. Its shape, size, and structure reveal how it lived, how it moved, and how it interacted with its environment. Soft-bodied fossils are especially valuable here because they preserve features that hard parts alone never could. Muscles hint at movement. Body symmetry suggests behavior. Delicate structures reveal feeding strategies. These details allow scientists to reconstruct ecosystems that would otherwise be invisible. Fossils also record environmental conditions with surprising precision. The presence or absence of certain types of organisms tells us about water depth, temperature ranges, and nutrient availability. Some creatures only thrive under specific conditions, making them biological indicators. Finding them preserved together paints a picture of what the ancient ocean was like at that moment in time. Chemical signals locked within fossils add another layer of information. The minerals that replace tissues carry signatures of the surrounding water chemistry. These signatures can reveal things like oxygen levels, acidity, and even aspects of global climate at the time of preservation. In this way, fossils become environmental sensors that were accidentally deployed millions of years ago. Preserved ecosystems also reveal how life responded to major planetary changes. Shifts in fossil assemblages can mark transitions between warm and cold periods, stable climates, and turbulent ones. By tracking which organisms appear, disappear, or change over time, scientists can see how ecosystems adapted or collapsed in response to environmental stress. One of the most powerful insights comes from community preservation. When multiple species are preserved together, their spatial arrangement and relative abundance tell stories about food webs and interactions. Who lived near whom? Who likely ate what? Who depended on which resources? It is ecological gossip, frozen in stone. These fossils also challenge assumptions about extinction. Some organisms thought to have vanished entirely are later found preserved in unexpected places, extending their known ranges and lifespans. This forces scientists to rethink evolutionary timelines and reconsider how resilient life can be under the right conditions. Ancient oceans themselves come into focus through these records. Changes in circulation patterns, nutrient flow, and water chemistry leave imprints in preserved life. Fossils become proxies for understanding how oceans behaved on a planetary scale, long before humans were around to measure them. Even climate models benefit from these preserved creatures. Fossil data provides real-world constraints, grounding theoretical reconstructions in physical evidence. The past becomes less speculative and more tangible, informed by organisms that actually lived through those conditions. Perhaps, most importantly, these fossils humanize deep time. They transform abstract concepts like ancient climates and extinct ecosystems into stories anchored by living things. A preserved jellyfish or worm becomes a witness, reminding us that Earth's history is not just about rocks and temperatures, but about life navigating constant change. In that sense, fossils really are gossip columns. They whisper secrets about ancient seas, dramatic climate shifts, and ecosystems that thrived and vanished. And the more carefully we listen, the more clearly Earth's distant past comes into focus. Once a creature survives death, decay, burial, chemistry, and deep time, it does not retire quietly. It becomes evidence. And not the boring kind. Preserved marine creatures are some of the most talkative witnesses Earth has ever produced. They do not just tell us what lived long ago. They spill secrets about how the planet worked, how oceans behaved, and how entire ecosystems rose, struggled, and sometimes collapsed in spectacular fashion. Every preserved organism is a snapshot of environmental conditions at the exact moment it lived and died. Its body carries clues about water temperature, depth, chemistry, and available resources. The shape of a creature can reveal whether it lived in calm waters or turbulent ones. Its size can hint at nutrient availability. Even its posture in death can suggest whether it lived in stable conditions or faced sudden environmental stress. Soft-bodied fossils are especially revealing because they preserve anatomy that hard parts never record. Muscles tell us how animals moved. Digestive structures hint at what they ate. Body symmetry and segmentation reflect evolutionary experimentation. These details allow scientists to reconstruct not just individual species, but entire lifestyles that would otherwise be invisible. When multiple organisms are preserved together, the gossip really starts flowing. Assemblages of fossils reveal who lived alongside whom, which species were common, and which were rare. This information helps scientists rebuild ancient food webs. Predator and prey relationships emerge. Competition becomes visible. Ecosystems stop being abstract ideas and start behaving like real communities with real interactions. Preserved creatures also serve as environmental indicators. Certain organisms only thrive under very specific conditions. Finding them in the fossil record instantly narrows down what the ancient ocean must have been like. Some indicate low oxygen, others point to stable temperatures. Some signal nutrient-rich waters, while others suggest scarcity. Each species adds a line to the environmental profile. Chemistry deepens the story. The minerals that replace tissues during preservation lock in chemical signatures from ancient seawater. These signatures can be analysed to infer things like ocean acidity, circulation patterns, and even global climate trends. In this way, fossils act like time-stamped data loggers, recording conditions long before instruments existed. This information becomes especially powerful when tracked through time. Changes in preserved communities reveal how ecosystems responded to shifting climates. Warming events, cooling periods, and major environmental disruptions leave fingerprints in the fossil record. Some species disappear, others adapt or expand. Patterns emerge that show how resilient or fragile ecosystems were under stress. Preserved marine life also reshapes our understanding of extinction. Traditional fossil records, biased toward hard parts, made extinctions look sudden and absolute. Deep-sea preservation reveals a more nuanced picture. Some lineages lingered longer than expected. Others retreated into environments we rarely sampled. The deep ocean exposes survival stories hidden from view. Ancient oceans themselves come into sharper focus through these fossils. Changes in species distribution reflect shifts in ocean circulation. The spread or disappearance of certain organisms can indicate how currents moved nutrients around the planet. In this way, preserved creatures help scientists reconstruct the physical behavior of oceans, not just their biological contents. These fossils even influence how we think about modern climate change. By studying how ancient ecosystems responded to past environmental shifts, scientists gain insight into potential future outcomes. Fossils become cautionary tales and sources of resilience at the same time, showing both collapse and adaptation in Earth's long history. Perhaps the most profound lesson preserved creatures teach us is humility. They remind us that Earth has hosted wildly different worlds before, each with its own rules and rhythms. Oceans have changed, climates have swung, life has endured, adapted, and sometimes failed. The present is just one chapter in a much longer story. So when scientists study these fossils, they are not just cataloguing ancient life. They are eavesdropping on Earth's past, reading gossip columns written in stone. And those columns are full of drama, resilience, surprise, and the occasional reminder that the planet has been reinventing itself long before we ever showed up to take notes. It is tempting to think of fossilization as something that only happened in the distant past, back when the planet felt more dramatic and the rules of nature were still being written. But the deep ocean does not care about timelines or nostalgia. The same processes that preserved ancient creatures are still operating right now, quietly and methodically, turning today's marine life into tomorrow's deep time artifacts. Every day, organisms die in the deep ocean. Most of them will vanish, recycled back into the ecosystem. But a small fraction will encounter the right conditions at the right time. They will settle into stable environments, avoid disturbance, and begin the long transition from biology to geology. Fossilization is not a closed chapter. It is an ongoing one. Modern deep-sea environments mirror ancient ones in many important ways. Darkness, stability, low energy, and chemical consistency still define vast regions of the seafloor. Sediments continue to accumulate. Mineral-rich waters still interact with organic remains. The ocean floor remains one of the most reliable places on Earth for long-term preservation. This means that some creatures alive today are already being archived. Soft-bodied organisms, delicate in life, may leave behind mineralized impressions or chemical signatures that future scientists will study. Bones, shells, and even fragile structures can be captured under the right conditions. The process does not announce itself. It simply unfolds over time. One of the most fascinating implications is that future fossils will record modern ecosystems in detail. Species we consider ordinary could become crucial clues for understanding today's oceans. Their preservation will document current climate conditions, ocean chemistry, and ecological relationships. In this way, the deep sea is already preparing a record of the Anthropocene, whether we like it or not. Modern technology has allowed scientists to observe early stages of preservation directly. Deep-sea cameras and submersibles have documented remains resting undisturbed on the seafloor for years, sometimes decades. These observations confirm that the same slow, protective conditions still apply. The deep ocean remains remarkably consistent in its behavior. This ongoing preservation also raises intriguing questions about the future. What will fossilize from our time? Which species will leave a trace, and which will vanish without record? The deep ocean will make those decisions based on environment, not importance. Charisma does not increase fossilization odds. There is also a strange comfort in knowing that preservation continues. It means Earth's memory is still being written. The planet is still keeping receipts, quietly documenting the life that passes through its oceans. Long after human records fade, deep-sea archives will remain. Modern deep-sea preservation also serves as a reminder of vulnerability. Changes in ocean conditions can alter preservation potential. Shifts in chemistry, temperature, or sedimentation could disrupt processes that have operated for millions of years. The deep ocean's ability to preserve life is resilient, but not invincible. For now, though, the system persists. Somewhere in the darkness, a creature has just died and settled into an environment that will treat it kindly. It will rest, undisturbed. While sediments accumulate and chemistry works patiently, it will not know it is becoming important. Millions of years from now, a future intelligence may uncover its remains and try to understand the world it lived in. They will study its structure, analyze its chemistry, and reconstruct its environment. They will wonder what kind of planet produced it. So while museums display ancient fossils as relics of a distant past, the deep ocean continues its quiet work. New exhibits are already in progress. The stars of tomorrow's fossil halls are drifting, crawling, and swimming today, unaware that their journey toward geological fame has already begun. After all the chemistry, geology, patience, and improbably well-timed accidents, one truth rises to the surface. The ocean is not just a place where life exists. It is a place where life is remembered. While continents crack, climates swing, and species come and go, the deep ocean quietly keeps records, storing moments of existence with a dedication that borders on obsessive. What makes this so remarkable is how unintentional it all is. The ocean does not preserve creatures out of sentiment or curiosity. There is no purpose, no design, no cosmic librarian carefully filing away bodies for future generations. Preservation happens as a side effect of conditions aligning just right. Darkness, stillness, chemistry, and time cooperate without ever realizing what they are creating. And yet, the result is the greatest archive Earth has ever built. Vast stretches of seafloor hold stories that predate forests, dinosaurs, and even complex land life. Some of those stories have already been discovered. Many more remain sealed away, waiting for tectonics, erosion, or curiosity to bring them back into view. The mystery is part of the magic. We know the deep ocean preserves life, but we have explored only a tiny fraction of it. Most of this archive remains untouched, unobserved, and unknown. For every famous fossil site, there are countless others still hidden beneath kilometers of water and sediment. The ocean is not done surprising us. This perspective changes how we think about extinction and survival. Disappearance from the surface does not always mean erasure. Sometimes it means relocation into Earth's long-term memory. Life may vanish from ecosystems, but traces of it endure, locked away until conditions allow rediscovery. There is also something humbling about the scale of time involved. Human history spans thousands of years. The ocean's archive spans hundreds of millions. Civilizations rise and fall in the time it takes a single sediment layer to form. Against that backdrop, the ocean's patience feels almost alien. And yet, it is oddly comforting. It means Earth remembers more than we do. Long after languages fade and monuments crumble, the deep ocean will still hold evidence of what once lived here. The planet keeps its own records, independent of observers. This understanding invites a different relationship with the ocean. It is not just a resource or a frontier. It is a library, a museum without walls, a history book written in minerals and silence. And unlike most museums, it does not curate for popularity. It preserves the famous and the obscure with equal indifference. The humor in all this is impossible to ignore. The most fragile, squishy, easily destroyed creatures sometimes get the best preservation, while hard, dominant species vanish without a trace. The ocean plays favourites, but its choices rarely align with our expectations. As listeners step away from this journey, the hope is not just that they have learned how preservation works, but that they carry a sense of wonder with them. Somewhere beneath the waves, entire worlds are resting in darkness, perfectly still, waiting. The ocean does not advertise this service. It does not ask for recognition. It simply does what it has always done. And in doing so, it becomes the quiet guardian of life's memory. Beneath the surface lies the greatest archive Earth has ever built. No tickets, no closing hours. Just time, pressure, chemistry, and the slow, patient art of remembering.